Okay, this is our house. So, okay. So, I just began the recording on the computer. So let's just begin Parshas B'Shalach. I want to share with you. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to start the Parsha with two questions. Hold on one second. Here we go. Okay. So the very end of the first Aliyah. Oops, hold on one second. Yeah, okay. Look at Pasuk Hay here. In Pasuk Hay, the very end of the first Aliyah. Let me just see if I can get my annotator here. That'll make it better. Okay, so Pasuk Hay. Vayugad lemelech Mitzrayim ki barach ha'am. They told the king of Egypt, ki barach ha'am, the Jews escaped. The Ahapach leif of Paroi, and Paroi and his Savavadav, and Paroi and his servants had a change of heart. Elam vayemru, and this is what I want to speak about. Vayemru, and they say, Paroi makes a statement. They all make a statement. Ma zeis asinu. What is this we have done? Ki shalachnu es Yisrael me'avdim, that we've sent the Jews away. Now, what's interesting is if you look actually at the, just translate it. Just translate that sentence. Ma zeis asinu. What have we done? So what have we done is a question, right? It's a question. What have we done that we sent the Jews away? And in fact, if you look at the English, they punctuate it here with a question mark. But then the question is, why does it say vayemru mazle sasinu? And they said, what it should be v'yishalu, and they asked v'yishalu, they asked mazle sasinu. So the fact that and again, everything in Torah, and this is the eyes through which we always have to look at Torah, everything is b'diuk. If it's a question, v'yishalu is the right Hebrew word, and they asked. Vayemru is a statement. So ma zeis asinu is not a question, it's actually a statement. But what is that statement that they're saying? Ma zeis asinu, what have we done? That's question number one. Question number two, I'm going to go to the beginning of the third Aliyah. The Jews are standing at Kriyas Yamsuf. Hold on one second. Let me go back into there and share the beginning of the third Aliyah. Take a look in the very beginning of the third Aliyah. This is the Jews are standing at Kriyas Yamsuf. The raging sea is in front of them. Paro's army is behind them. They cry out to Hashem. And this is Hashem's response. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, ma titzach alai. Why are they crying to me? Daber el b'nei Yisrael v'yiso. Speak to the Jews and let them go forth. Go straight into the sea, Hashem is saying. But the question is, why does Hashem ask, ma titzach alai? Why are they crying to me? What do you mean, why are we crying to you? Isn't that what a Jew is supposed to do? When we find ourselves in a difficult matzah, when we find ourselves in an unreal challenge, in a difficult place, with the sea in front of us and Paro's army behind us, and there seems to be no way, but derech hateva, no way, by the laws of nature, there's nowhere to escape, there's nowhere to go. And in fact, the Medrash tells us that there were Jews there who wanted to commit suicide, wanted to jump into the sea. There were other Jews who wanted to fight with the Egyptians. There were other Jews who wanted to go back to Mitzrayim. There were other Jews who wanted to daven. This is a famous Medrash. And Hashem says, Ma titzach alai, why are you crying? What do you mean? What kind of question is that? Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Isn't that what a Jew is meant to do when we find ourselves with a sea in front of us and Paro's army in back of us? We're supposed to cry to Hashem. So what is Hashem asking us there? Okay. So in order to understand both of those questions, I want to preface with, I think, what was really sort of the underlying message of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we have to understand when we're learning Parshas B'Shalach, Parshas Boy, all of these Parshas of redemption, that Yetzias Mitzrayim wasn't simply about freeing the slaves. It wasn't simply that Am Yisrael was no longer enslaved to another nation, that they were free to live however they want. That was not the point of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The point of Yetzias Mitzrayim wasn't freedom from slavery per se. It was the freedom of that slavery in order to serve Hashem on Har Sinai. In other words, the entire purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim wasn't simply freedom for the sake of freedom, as great of an ideal as that is, but it was much deeper than that. It was the freedom to live a life of purpose, a life of meaning, a life as Hashem, as Moshe says to Parah the entire time. We are going to serve Hashem on that mountain. The entire purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim was to create an Am Yisrael that would live a life of purpose, a life of meaning. And that's what Yetzias Mitzrayim is ultimately all about. And that still reverberates till today. That every one of us is meant to live a life since then, since Yetzias Mitzrayim. A life not just where we're here in this world trying to take care of ourselves and take care of our families. We have to do all of that as well. But amidst all of that, of all the stresses of Elam Haza, of taking care of ourselves, taking care of our families, etc., we're meant to live a life of purpose, a life of meaning. And that means everything that happens to us, every event that takes place in our lives. In fact, every conversation we have, everything that we experience throughout the day, we're meant to look at through the lenses of how does this fit with my purpose? The Baal Shem Tov tells us and teaches us that everything that a Jew experiences, everything, not just the big things, every conversation, every event that you see, everything that you hear, everything that a Jew experiences, everything that a Jew it takes in through sight, through hearing, etc., is meant to be a lesson in Avodas Hashem. And we're meant to look at life through those lenses. It's not just, life is not just a trash bag of coincidences blown open by the wind so that certain things happen. Okay, this is just the natural course of events. To the contrary, people ask, why doesn't Hashem speak to us like he spoke to the Nevi'im? And it's a fair question, and there's lots of different answers to that. It's not our Avodas Hashem. Hashem does speak to us. Hashem openly speaks to us, but in different ways than he spoke to the Nevi'im. Everything that we encounter throughout the day is Hashem speaking to us. Every interaction, everything that we see is Hashem speaking to us. And our job is to ask, Mazais, what is this? What's the purpose behind this? I mean, we've spoken about this in relationship to challenges and difficulties. We're meant to look at every obstacle with those lenses. But reality is, every event that happens in life, everything that goes on throughout my day, when living a life of purpose and a life of meaning means finding the meaning in everything. Asking the question, Mazais, what is this? What is this about? What's the purpose for this? How can I reflect on this towards my purpose in creation? What is Hashem's communication to me through this? And this was really a big element of the Golus Mitzrayim, of the Shibud, of the slavery of Mitzrayim. One of the achievements that Parah and his army sought to achieve through the slavery was to beat the Jews down to such a point that they're no longer looking for purpose or looking for meaning. And this is when Moshe tells Parah to let the Jews go to serve. Parah says, stop talking about service of Hashem. Stop talking about these spiritual ideals. They're lazy. They need to work hard. This was the mentality of Parah and Mitzrayim, to load us up with such avodas perach, with such difficult backbreaking labor, not just to break us physically, but to break us of any kind of purpose, of meaning, of understanding that there's purpose to our lives. This is what Parah wanted to break. This was the point of the slavery of Egypt, and this fits in with the philosophy of Mitzrayim. The philosophy of Mitzrayim was one of the gods that they worshipped was the god of nature, right? They worshipped the Nile, they worshipped the Tleh, the Aries, the astrological sign, because they saw that life has no purpose and has no meaning and is only guided by the forces of nature. This was Egyptian philosophy, which the Jews themselves became steeped into as well. And so, like every mighty, powerful dictatorship, the philosophy is that might and power are ultimately the ultimate determinations of right and wrong. And that's what Pare believed. And that's what Mitzrayim believed. And so the Jews were nothing more than a slave nation to always be a slave nation. And there was never any purpose and never any meaning and never any depth other than that. That is their whole existence. And this is what Mitzrayim was meant to, and this is what Pare wanted to inculcate into the Jewish psychology and into the Jewish mind. And so this is really the whole underlying message of Galus Mitzrayim and Yetzias Mitzrayim. Galus Mitzrayim is, I have no other purpose other than to work for Pare, to collect physicality and to build edifices with that physicality. That is my whole purpose. The irony is, here we are 3,000 years later, and some of us still have that belief. It's a different Pare now. Today's Pare is the dollar. And how many of us spend our lives enslaved to collecting the dollar and building our edifices. And this is the real message behind Yetzias Mitzrayim, is that that's not the life of the Jew. The life of the Jew is notwithstanding that we live in the physical world and we're meant to live in the physical world and build homes and build families and build buildings. But imbued in that physical world, we're meant to imbue a life of spirituality, a life of meaning, a life of purpose, a life of godliness. This is the whole purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim. We weren't let out. Hashem didn't break the laws of nature and send the 10 plagues just to have us come out of Mitzrayim to be enslaved to our own internal Pare or to some other external Pare. And so this is what Yetzias Mitzrayim was. It wasn't only physical freedom, but it was the freedom to ask, what's my purpose? What's my meaning? And the truth is, on a personal level, this question is really what brought me to Judaism. As many of you know, I grew up completely in a secular home, not religious at all. And even as a late teenager, I asked this question, because what's the purpose of life? Why am I here? Is life just eating, sleeping, drinking, dying, and collecting as much possessions as I can along the way? And it was that question that I just couldn't believe. Life has no other purpose other than just existing. And this is a question we're all meant to ask ourselves. I remember when I think I mentioned this once before, when I first became religious, and this question burned within me. What's the meaning of life? Why am I here? What is my purpose in existing? And I remember thinking, like, nobody asks this question around me. And I remember thinking that when I was becoming religious, and then I remember going to Crown Heights for the first time and coming into this Lubavitch community of people who are religious. And I remember thinking, here, everybody's going to be asking this question. And it was a shock to me that here I come into this religious community and a lot of people didn't ask this question either. And even amongst religious Jews, it was so many were just living sort of this life of living, eating, sleeping. Of course, there was some more meaning. There was Torah and there was mitzvahs, but it was all done sort of like habitually, like this is what we do because we're Jews. And again, so it doesn't only apply to secular Jews, it applies to all of us. That how often do we ask, or do our children ask, as they get older, what's my purpose and what's my meaning? And why am I here? And this freedom to ask why am I here? What's my purpose? What's the meaning of this event, of this challenge, of this encounter that I had? That's the lenses through which we're meant to look at life. That's really the underlying message of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And that's why there's a pasuk in Sefer Devarim where it says, V'ata Yisrael, ma Hashem Elokecha shel me'imcha. Now the Jewish people, what does Hashem ask you? Ki'im liyira, except to fear Hashem. But another way to punctuate that pasuk is V'ata Yisrael, ma, the ability to ask why Hashem Elokecha shel me'imcha. That's what Hashem asks from you. To the ma, Hashem wants from you the ma, to ask why, to seek purpose in everything. Ma is what Hashem Elokecha shel me'imcha. So you could translate the pasuk. What does Hashem ask from you? Ma Hashem Elokecha shel me'imcha. Or ma, comma. It's the ma that Hashem Elokecha shel me'imcha that Hashem asks from you, to ask the ma. And because this is the whole purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim, reflect for a second on the Pesach Seder. Right? It's going to be a few months from now. Mirz Hashem, we'll all be sitting at the Seder in Yerushalayim, Yerakodesh, Mirz Hashem, with Mashiach Tzidkenu. And at the Seder is the only Yom Tov that we have. All of our Shalosh Regalim and our other Yom Tevim, but it's the only Yom Tov that the entire format is Shaila and Tshuva, question and answer. And this is the reason why. Why is Pesach question and answer? What about Shavuos? What about Rosh Hashanah? What about Sukkot? But no, Pesach, Yetzias Mitzrayim, is all about the questions and answers. Because this is what Yetzias Mitzrayim is all about. The capacity to question. The freedom to question Ma. What are we doing? Why are we here? And that's why. How does the Pesach Seder begin? Ma nishtana halayla hazeh. Begins with the word Ma. Why are we here? And in fact, that question itself could be punctuated differently. Normally we punctuate it, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh. Why is this night different from all other nights? So then it really should be 5 questions, right? I always wondered that. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh should be question number 1, and there's 4 questions afterwards, right? But what if we translate it a little bit differently? Ma, the ability to ask Ma is what is nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halaylos. This, I'm giving you Dvar Torah for the Pesach Seder now. Write it down. Write this Dvar Torah down for a few weeks from now, a few months from now. Ma is what's nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halaylos shel galus. The capacity to ask Ma. It's a statement. It's not a question. I've never heard that before until I learned it this week. That's so beautiful. That's exactly right. The capacity to ask Ma is what is nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halaylos. And then if you start looking through those lenses, you start noticing the word Ma comes up a lot. Rosh Chacham Mahu Eimer. The Chacham asks Ma. Rasha Mahu Eimer. The Rasha asks Ma. Tam Mahu Eimer. They all are asking Ma. This is the purpose. Matzazu sha'anu eichlim al shum Ma. This ma'marzu sha'anu eichlim al shum Ma. This matzah that we're eating. So normally we say this matzah that we're eating al shum Ma. Why do we eat it? It's al shum Ma. We eat this matzah. We consume the myrrh for the singular purpose of asking Ma. That's the whole theme of tonight, of Pesach. Tonight, when we're celebrating Yetzias Mitzrayim, it's important upon every one of us to understand tonight's the night that we began asking Ma, that we began asking why. Up till now, we were enslaved, and we didn't have the freedom, we didn't have the menuchas nefesh, we didn't have the tranquility, we didn't have the mindset to be able to ask Ma. We were embedded in slavery. We were tormented, we were tortured, and this was the whole purpose of Shibud Mitzrayim, to prevent us from looking for a purpose, from asking that question of Ma. And so the whole entire purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim was to ask Ma. And now when we look at it through those lenses, and we go back to our original question, in the first pasuk of Parshas Beshalach. Let's go back there for a second. In the very first pasuk the very first aliyah in Parshas Beshalach, right? We said, what did Vayemru? They said, Ma zoisasinu, what have we done? What have we done? But the question, why isn't then it should be V'yishalu, right? So what Pare is saying is something different. Vayemru, they're making a statement. Pare is making a statement by allowing Bnei Yisrael out, by allowing them freedom. Ma zoisasinu, we created them the ability to ask Ma zois. We created the Mazais for Klal Yisrael by allowing, he's making a statement. Vayemru, he said, by allowing them out, Mazais in quotations, the Mazais of the Jewish people, Asinu, we created by giving them the freedom. Because we have sent them out of our slavery. So now, we've allowed them to ask Mazais. This is the theme. And this, in the third aliyah, answers our question. When Klal Yisrael cried out to Hashem, and Hashem said, Ma titzach alai, why are you crying out to me? Let's punctuate. It doesn't make sense. What do you mean? What are we supposed to do? Why is Hashem asking that question? We're supposed to cry out to Hashem. No, translate it differently. Vayemer Hashem el Moshe. When was the very first time that we were able to ask the question, Ma? That we felt that freedom? Well, that was at the Yam Suf, when we were no longer enslaved, when we came out of Mitzrayim. So when it says that Klal Yisrael cried out to Hashem at the Yam Suf, what did they cry out? They cried out exactly this. What's the purpose of this? What's the reason behind this? Seemingly, we were let out of Mitzrayim only to find the raging sea in front of us and Pare behind us. How could this have any meaning? What's the ma? Vayemer Hashem el Moshe, and Hashem says to Moshe, Ma, the Ma of the Jewish people, Titzach alai, cries out to me. I hear them crying, Ma. I hear them seeking for purpose. I hear them looking for meaning. The Ma is Titzach alai. The Ma of Klal Yisrael, Titzach alai, cries out to me. And therefore, in the schus of not just living life, the schus of searching for meaning, in the schus of searching for purpose amidst this incredible challenge, Daber b'nei Yisrael v'yiso, speak to the Jewish people, and I will create miracles for them. They can go forward, and I will split the sea. V'yiso, go forward. Hashem is telling us something so powerful here, that when we are facing challenges, when the seas and raging seas in front of us and Pare's army is behind us, and we've all been in that matzav, we've all been in that situation where there doesn't seem to be a way out. Our ma is titzach alai. When we look to for purpose in here, daber b'nei Yisrael, and the schus of that, so Hashem will create the miracles and we'll be able to go forward. Such a powerful message. And I think this is the underlying theme in Kriyas Yamsuf, in the Pesach Seder, in Parshas B'Shalach. And it's not coincidental, just to conclude this year, it's not coincidental that this Shabbos happens to be the 10th of Shvat, Parshas B'Shalach. The 10th of Shvat is an incredibly significant day in Chabad history. It is the yahrzeit of the previous Rebbe, but it is also the day that the Lubavitcher Rebbe himself assumed the leadership. A year later, in 1951, assumed the leadership of the Chabad movement. And I think when you reflect upon the Rebbe's entire leadership, which the day that he assumed leadership is the time to really reflect upon that, and the Rebbe really transformed Chabad into this small, tiny Hasidic sect that in Brooklyn davened in a room maybe a little bit bigger than this dining room right here, not much bigger. I mean, I'm to tell you what Chabad is today, to a force that has transformed world Jewry. And if you look at there's so many themes of the Rebbe's leadership, the scholarship of the Rebbe, the outreach of the Rebbe, sending emissaries to every corner of the world, these big public menorah lightings, and all of the campaigns of how the Rebbe transformed really world Jewry. And I think one of the underlying themes of the Rebbe's entire leadership, and this is so, Hashgacha Pratis, that Yud Shvat comes out in Parshas B'Shalach, is that why did the Rebbe send out emissaries everywhere? Why? Other Jewish leaders thought the Rebbe was this was not something appropriate to do. How are you sending out couples to Alaska and Siberia and Uzbekistan and China, where there's no infrastructure, there's no yeshivas, there's no restaurants, there's no kosher sushi, there's no chalav Yisrael? How could you do that? But the answer is that if every Jew has a purpose, if every Jew has a reason to be, then it's incumbent upon us to educate and to teach and to bring every Jew to that understanding. And therefore, we have to send out emissaries all over the world to reach every single Jew, because this is the culmination of the entire purpose of creation, the coming of Mashiach. We all have to recognize, every one of us, that we have a responsibility. And those of us that recognize it have the extra responsibility to teach others. And we're all ultimately interconnected. And therefore, the Avos Yisrael that the Rebbe implanted within his Chassidim and within Klal Yisrael, the sense of mission and the sense of purpose that the Rebbe implanted into his emissaries and into all of Klal Yisrael, all is connected to this idea that every one of us has a purpose, that and not only every one of us has a purpose, but that the entire fruition of the entire purpose of creation will not be able to be achieved if you don't reach your purpose. It's not just that we all have a purpose, but the world, you are indispensable to the whole purpose of all of creation. And that message was the Rebbe's message. This was the theme of the Rebbe's leadership, that no Jew is superfluous, that no mission is superfluous, that every one of us have to live life with that deeper understanding of asking Ma'azais. And Pari understood that by Yetzias Mitzrayim, by Ma'azais Asinu. We gave the Jews the capacity to ask Ma'azais by letting them out. This is the Pesach Seder. This is Yetzias Mitzrayim. This is ultimately what the foundations of Judaism and the foundations of Geula, of redemption. So just like 3,000 years ago, the physical and emotional and spiritual redemption began with the Jews asking Ma, and Hashem saying, Ma titzak alai. Their Ma cried out to me. So here we are 3,000 years later in a different Golus. Many of us still enslaved to a different Parai. And it's incumbent upon all of us, when we learn Parshas B'Shalach, to internalize the message and to live with the message of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the message of Ma. What is my purpose? Why am I here? And to reflect on our own lives. Every one of us, Hashem gave certain talents, certain abilities, certain strengths, certain keiches. No two of us are alike. There's a reason why no two of us are alike, because every one of us has a unique mission in this world. And the world cannot reach its purpose unless I engage and fulfill my purpose, unless I ask the Ma. So Amir Hashem, in the schus of asking the Ma, in the schus of living a life of purpose, Hashem should respond in kind to our reaffirming our purpose and living a life of purpose and a life of meaning. Hashem will Amir Hashem respond in kind and take away all of the cheshech, take away all of the tzimtzumim and all of the galus, and bring us the ultimate purpose, the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, b'imheira v'yimeinu, amen. So let's just conclude with Tehillim 121, as we always do, in the schus of our IDF, in the schus of our hostages. They should come home safely. In the schus of Acheinu v'Achaseinu b'nei Yisrael, wherever they may be. Okay, it's Tehillim 121. Shir l'maloi seseinai harim yayin yaboy Ezri mi madinoi oisei shemayim v'yaretz ayitin l'mot raglecha ayanim shemrecha hine l'yanim v'layishan shemer Yisrael adinoi shemrecha netzilcha ayad yaminecha yemem hashemesh leikacha v'yireach b'layla adinoi yishmarcha mikara yishmer es nafshecha. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Amir Hashem. We should see everybody next week in Yerushalayim, Yerukodesh, with Mashiach Tzidkenu, b'imheira v'yimeinu, amen. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful
week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.